ahead and get started then. It's so nice to see everyone. Thank you for coming. And I know it's a busy time in the semester. So if any of the students need to leave, don't worry about it. You need to take care of yourselves and your study. We are recording this so that if you want access to seeing it at a later time, you will have that. So my name is Theresa Hernandez, and I'm the Associate Dean for Research for the College of Arts and Sciences at CU Boulder. And really what I spend a great deal of time working on with a lot of excitement, enthusiasm, is this partnership between CU Boulder and Fort Lewis College. And as you know from Callie, who got her PhD at CU Boulder, who's now faculty at Fort Lewis College. And then there's postdoctoral teaching fellows that CU Boulder is having be in residence at Fort Lewis College. Now what we're trying to do is the other side of this bidirectional circle. So we're really hoping that we can get you excited about possibly going to graduate school at CU Boulder. And what we have prepared today is just a sort of some basics about graduate school, just to whet your appetite and hopefully answer some substantive questions if you've been thinking about it for a long time. So on the call, we have faculty, we have people from the graduate school, we have grad students. We also have arts and sciences individuals who help with our recruitment. And I'm going to introduce them as we go through the slides. And this is sort of the format. We'll talk about academic journeys, Callie Cole's specifically. What are things that are good to know? And the main thing to know is that you don't have to know everything. There's lots of people around you that can help with that. And then just a little bit about how to plan. And then we hope to have time at the end for any questions that you have. You can put them in the chat. The chat is private, but you can send it to either Callie or Yasmin or I or anyone else, and then we'll try to get those answered. So let's begin. So we'll start with academic journeys, and I'm going to run the slides for you, Callie, and you can tell me if you want it fully populated or you want to do it step by step.
Good. I say go ahead and just fully populate the whole slide. Why not? All right. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm Callie, and as Theresa just pointed out, I got my PhD at CU Boulder. I just wanted to mention that back when I was in your shoes, getting a PhD was completely off my radar. It showed up on my radar the fall of my senior year when I realized that I didn't want to be a waitress for the rest of my life, and a faculty member happened to mention that graduate school in chemistry doesn't involve a lot of debt. In fact, you get paid. I have it in my mind, and a lot of our students have it in their minds, that you have to go deep in debt to continue studying chemistry. In fact, I was given a full stipend and a fellowship, and so I was getting paid quite well during my 5 years at CU Boulder. So once I found that out, I decided to try to do the application process, and luckily I had a mentor at University of Montana who helped guide me through signing up for the GRE exam, making sure I contact different advisors at CU Boulder to see if there was someone who I wanted to work with. And I think having both a mentor at your undergraduate institution, which I can be that person, and reaching out to potential mentors at CU Boulder or the institution you're applying to are really, really important. So I lucked out. I feel like I got one of the best PhD advisors there is. Dr. Veronica Beerbaum up there on the left. She advised me at CU Boulder during my PhD. And yeah, she is continually mentoring me. Actually, now that I'm a faculty member, I still reach out to her, and she still introduces me to people at conferences. If you find a mentor in your PhD program or graduate program that is next level awesome, like Dr. Beerbaum was, they don't really leave your life. They're still a mentor decades later. So finding a good mentor is fantastic, and we can help you do that. On the right is one of my early Fort Lewis College students, Alexa Dobbs, who happened to get an Outstanding Student Poster Award at this American Chemical Society conference. And I should mention that she was competing against graduate students and postdocs, but she was in a first-year research position here at Fort Lewis. So another thing I'd like to point out is that at Fort Lewis, you get more hands-on research than any other graduate that I see from any other larger school. So you're much more competitive than you think you are. And a lot of times when I look at Fort Lewis resumes, I personally know that the student ran a gas chromatograph or uses spectrometer or an NMR, and I don't see those listed on resumes because I think sometimes people don't think it's impressive. It is. So I really encourage you, whatever computer programs, whatever instruments, whatever skills you've built in your courses and in research at Fort Lewis, really blow out your resume because those are way more impressive than you think that they are. At larger schools, the undergraduates are competing with graduate students and postdocs to get time on those. I just stole several of you from the NMR room just now. So like, put that on your resume. It's competitive and it helps you stand out. Yeah, I mean, the reason I chose this picture for this slide is to emphasize mentorship, because not only would I not have considered a graduate program, I never would have gotten admitted or graduated from a graduate program without really high quality mentorship throughout the entire process. So find your mentors, both here and at CU, and we will help you. That's my main story. Go ahead and take it away, Theresa.
Okay, thank you so much. So what we're going to talk about next are some things to know, to keep in mind that hopefully will be useful. So we'll start with something that Callie just talked about, that there is funding available to cover costs, and that can be teaching and research assistantships, travel fellowships, scholarships, etc. And what I'd like to do is start with the two graduate students who are on the call. So Holly Olivares and then also Michael Drake. If you want to talk a little bit about your experience of funding during graduate school.
Sure thing. Holly, do you want to go first or you want me to lead it off? Sounds good. Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Drake. I am a fifth-year PhD candidate over at CU Boulder, where I'm just finishing up and actually coming to Fort Lewis next year as one of the visiting teaching postdocs that Theresa just mentioned. So I'm very excited to be joining you all in doing this exciting soon, and very honored to be part of this exciting program that I'm really happy has been put together over the last couple of years. So I'm actually cumulatively in my 7th year of graduate school, so I think I have a little bit of an idea of what I'm talking about at this point. Before I almost completed my PhD at CU, I also did my master's degree at North Carolina State University in Raleigh. And I would say the two things I really looked for when I was picking programs were, one, who are my mentors, just like Dr. Cole said, who are the people who are going to be working with me day to day, which is so important. But also, secondly, which program will support me the best, because I think it's very important to respect yourself and your time and to treat graduate school maybe less a school and more of a job as like your employment for the years that you're doing it, and to make sure that you're going to be able to like live a comfortable and tenable life. So at both stages, I made sure that I was going to programs that would support me with a reasonable stipend, provide me with the research opportunities and ability to gain funding that I needed, and sort of use that as one of my first selection processes. And the thing I will say is, well, I guess I should really say I can only really speak to the natural sciences. There are many different flavors of graduate school out there. And if you are in the natural sciences like I am, fortunately, there are a lot of opportunities out there, both at the master's and PhD level, to find fully funded projects. And the best way to do that is to reach out to people that are kind of further down the pipeline, to other graduate students, postdoc professors, find out what listservs they're looking at or posting job opportunities at, who to talk to. And the more you look, the more really great opportunities will show up. I was, especially from a master's, really surprised by how many paid opportunities there were out there that were also right in my wheelhouse for the kind of research that I wanted to do, when I was a little bit afraid I would have to take out more loans or something like that. So just be sure to ask around and build those networks, because they do exist within many fields. And it's definitely worth taking the time and considering that, you have value as a graduate student that's worth being, I don't want to say paid for, but compensated for.
Holly, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I would love to. Thank you. Hi, I'm a second-year PhD student at the University of Colorado Boulder. And just so you know, you're like the size of an ant on my screen. But I'm hoping that I'm not that small to you. But I'll add that I was a community college student. I'm a first-generation student that has gotten my bachelor degree and will get my PhD, which is very exciting. And then I transferred to university, and somewhere in there, I changed my major 3 times. And I never planned on going to graduate school. I was just going to get my bachelor degree. But when I transferred to university, I started hearing that you could get paid to go to graduate school. So I thought I'd check into it, but I didn't know who to talk to or who to ask. And so I always advocate for, it's scary, but like reaching out. I know people say reach out, reach out. What does that look like? For me, it looked like staying a little bit longer after class and just like overhearing people's conversations, and then getting the courage to ask, like, how do you find out about that? And then also going to office hours. And right now you can do office hours on Zoom, and that's a little less intimidating, but certainly asking questions. I also went to see my academic advisor all the time, because I figured out, like, they are a wealth of knowledge, but they don't know what you need to know. And so it's like there's this disconnect. And so I figured out that the more questions I asked, the more questions I figured out to ask. And then something would like spark in their brain, like, oh, you know what would be helpful for you? And so, like, I'm not saying they're not good at their job. I'm saying I figured out that I have to advocate for myself. There isn't anybody that's going to like hold your hand and figure out your path for you. And your path is not linear. It doesn't just go up, it goes all over the place. And so I just was like, okay, who are the people that give me information? I wanted to find them and talk to them as often as possible. And all the way up until the semester before I graduated, for all the meetings I had had, somebody forgot to tell me about one required class I was supposed to take for the college, not for my degree. And I was like, what? Are you kidding me? And so we got it worked out, but like it still happens. So definitely, like I said, it's not easy in the beginning, especially when it seems like everyone else knows how this works and you don't. But I promise you will find other students like you that you can commiserate with, and little by little you start to piece it together. And I always offer myself as a resource if you'd like to reach out after today's event and talk more about it. I'm happy to share like the good, the bad, and the ugly.
That's great. Thank you so much. Oh,
sorry, if you don't mind, I just one quick thing on top of
Yeah,
what Holly
please.
said that I think is a great point. The people that love talking about graduate school the most are graduate students. I know that one of the biggest things that helped me inform my pathway forward for going to graduate school is good conversations I had with graduate students when I was an undergrad. And if Fort Lewis doesn't have a opportunity to, or a graduate program in a field that you want to be in, don't be afraid to reach out to students at other schools, either at CU or any other university you're looking at. Graduate students are very approachable and a wealth of resource, and always, just like Holly said, pretty happy to chat, frankly, about every part about their program. And I kind of wish I had talked to more graduate students at more schools when I was at the undergraduate stage. So a very good piece of advice.
and I wanted to take a moment to ask Patrick, who works in the grad school, just to say just a little bit about travel fellowships and things that the graduate school offers to help you not just have a stipend to do the work you do, but also to go to a conference and present a poster like the picture of Dr. Cole. So could you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as kind of Michael pointed out, and Holly as well, a lot of you, if you go to grad school, will be funded through things like research assistantships and teaching assistantships. Those are largely roles that have you working for the department, often for your primary faculty advisor, whether that's in their lab or as a TA. But there are also ways that you can fund your own research. And the graduate school, while it doesn't offer those types of teaching assistantships, what they do offer is a bunch of different types of travel grants, dissertation completion awards, thesis completion awards. So if you're looking for funding to go travel and do research in a different state, if you need to access specific facilities elsewhere for your thesis or your dissertation, the graduate school has funds for those. We have funds for students who maybe don't have a TA or an RA in a final year of a PhD, but they need some funding to just finish up their dissertation. We offer that. So the funding we offer is a little more targeted, but we do have a lot of opportunities for specific targeted finance.
Okay, so I just wanted to go on to the next slide, and I want to make sure that Max, who's chair of environmental studies, has a chance to offer some, to say a few words because he has to leave at 4:30. So another piece of information about grad school that Dr. Cole talked about earlier is that it really is a lifelong relationship. And we sometimes use the word, when I was a grad student, about it's your academic family. So you have an academic sibling, you have an academic parent, an academic cousin, and really the graduate student plus the mentors, it creates this community, but it's also like a family, and it's lifelong. I'm still friends with people that I knew in graduate school. And so Max, would you like to say just a few words about your experience with your students and how you keep in touch and how that relationship develops? And then we can also hear from the grad students as well.
Great, thank you, Theresa, and thanks everybody. I mean, I really do appreciate that aspect of this work. I think it's partly attributed to the fact that most of us, if not all of us, who do the work that we do through a university, it's part of the passions of our pursuits too. It's not just simply a job. And so through that, we build really strong relationships, and we talk about these things that we all care a lot about, invest in one another. You know, just thinking about Dr. Cole's telling of her story in short, you know, I too have a similar story. I was working on a farm near Watsonville, California, and just was interested enough in some conversations that were going on in agroecology at the University of California, Santa Cruz, just started to go to classes and sit in and start asking questions like Holly was saying. And then next thing I knew, I started to get to know people and somehow ended up going back to school. So everybody has a story. And I think as Holly and Michael did a great job pointing out, is that we're all happy to kind of share where we've come from to help you kind of orient yourself about what it is you want to be doing and how this graduate school experience could factor into that. And so I think I'm glad, you know, to be in community with Holly and with Michael and with all the others here, because we really do care about one another. We want to see each other succeed. And so that translates to mentorship. It translates to just simple friendship along the way.
Holly or Michael, would you like to add something to that as well?
Yeah, I remember as an undergraduate presenting actually a poster similar to what Dr. Cole was describing for the first time, and at a small like local conference, and being pretty amazed by how well everyone knew each other within the community and feeling very intimidated by that. And I will say it is an intimidating thing from the outside looking in. I was just wondering, like, how do people form these communities and connections within their academic fields? And, you know, flash forward more than a decade later, it's been pretty amazing watching that same sort of thing build in my own life pretty organically. You know, I'm still very good friends with some of the people that I've worked with as an undergraduate, both other undergrads and professors, with people from my master's career, with people I've worked on research projects and side things outside of grad school along the way. And then of course, with my PhD cohort, who is you know, very close to me here at CU. And it's a pretty unique thing to be able to work with people that are very motivated, extremely intelligent, really driven, and most importantly, passionate about the same sort of like niche thing that you're about. The coolest thing about grad school that I think outweighs any of the, you know, downsides that are there, the work, the lifestyle and stuff like that, is that you get to pick what you care about and think about it every single day of your life. And that's a truly unique thing that is hard to find anywhere else in the world. And then to top it off, you get to do that alongside other people that are also excited about the exact same thing. They're all there because they want to be there, not because they just have to be. And it's a pretty, unique set of connections that you build along the way, almost without even trying. You know, you kind of blink and the next thing you know, all these people that are experts in these different slices of the same field. And it's just a great thing to be part of that comes with just being within the academic space for a prolonged period of time. And it's hard to put a finger on exactly where it begins or how you get into it. All I can say is it's been a great part of my life, having watching that grow around me.
Wow, Michael. I appreciate hearing that. I'm like, really cool. You're in your 5th year. I'm in my 2nd year. So I'm glad to hear by the time I'm in my 5th year, I might be making those similar comments. I was thinking something a little different, which is I really had to find community. And I have found community at CU Boulder, I'm happy to say. But the community that I have found is the community, for me, I am in an underrepresented group of folks within the student body at CU. And when I first started, before COVID, when I was in person, I wasn't really finding, everyone's very nice, but I wasn't really finding folks that I made deep connections with. I didn't feel like I met people I could tell my stories to. And I kept thinking, well, is this like a workplace versus, I don't know. I've never been in academia before. I've worked in, like I had a job, but not here. Anyway, long story short, I have found community in doing the work of trying to change the system that does make it difficult for those that come from underrepresented and underserved communities. Us banding together to do the work to challenge the processes and the policies that are in place that really isolate us is what has brought us together. And it's not just BIPOC folks, it's white folks as well. We've come together to do this work. And so that's where I have found community at CU, and I'm happy to be able to say that. I think a year ago I wouldn't have said that, but I've seen quite a shift in what's happening within the community at CU. And again, I'm happy to talk more about it if you're looking at CU for grad school.
It's great. Thank you so much, both of you, all of you. This sort of touches on each of our uniqueness, yes. And the fact that we bring that uniqueness to the work that we do as graduate students, where no one is going to study whatever you're studying exactly like you are. You will be the first to study it in your unique way, with your unique set of community, mentor, fellow grad students. And so I thought it might be nice if either the graduate students shared that, or if Max wanted to share a particular student that you remember who had just a really interesting take on what they were studying.
I'll just say something really briefly. Thanks, Theresa. And then I'd love to hear Holly and Michael's perspectives. What's really cool about it, I think Michael's already alluded to it, is that everybody's doing something unique. And that's really the way in which graduate research often goes. You're making a unique contribution in the world. And it definitely interacts with a lot of the things that other people are doing, like in our case, environmental studies or across the natural sciences. But everybody is fascinating for different reasons. Part of what brought them to do the work that they do, the work itself, and what they want to do with that work. And so I get really inspired with everybody. I mean, I could start to tell you individual stories, but the whole thing is really exciting to me.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. I now study the ocean, even though I live in Colorado. And before I started graduate school, I didn't know anything about the ocean because I grew up in New Mexico, which is even more of a dry climate. And there's definitely not water in New Mexico. But I did a summer research internship, and I was paired with someone who studies the ocean. And the research that I did with her was about volcanic eruptions. And so I still didn't think I was going to learn that much about the ocean. And now I'm a graduate student calling myself an ocean biogeochemist. So certainly, like, keep yourself open, because you never know. I'm also very people oriented. And so it happened to be the advisor I chose is someone that I had a connection with and that I felt like I could talk to on my best day and on my worst day. And that became priority number one for me for graduate school. The skills of doing research and the skills that we're learning during our PhD program or even master's program, those are skills you can use no matter what you're studying. And so I thought, as long as I'm learning about how the climate system works, okay, let's go learn about the ocean. And now people see me and think I'm an oceanographer, and I just think that's hilarious. But it's happening, right? I'm actually getting on a ship on Monday for 30 days in the North Atlantic to collect water and nutrient samples. And so people really think I'm an oceanographer now. And maybe in a couple of years, I'll embrace that as part of my identity. But right now, it's just an interesting process. Nothing in your own life ever feels as glamorous as someone else's life, right? And so I think for me that's my thing, is just like open up doors and keep your mind open, because you just never know what opportunities are going to be put in front of you. But as if you stay open, if you don't close the door because you think it doesn't match that thing you want to do, you might miss something that really could have expanded just you as a person.
And I'll definitely second that. One thing I've really enjoyed by having the freedom to just follow the things that you're interested in is watching how your own interests grow and change. I pretty much known my whole life, like wildlife conservation is the thing that drives me, what I wanted to do. And while I was undergraduate, I thought that meant just like wearing a lot of khaki and being out there chasing animals in the woods. And it's been really lovely, like watching as I myself change, as I learned more about what actually matters and what I care about, and what are like pragmatic ways to contribute to the field, how my interests have developed. Now I work kind of at the intersection of society, policy, and wildlife, sort of doing this dynamic thing, hence why I'm in the environmental studies program at CU and soon to be Fort Lewis. It's been a really, really cool journey, discovering more about what you care about. And on top of that, a really empowering thing as well. It's intimidating sometimes being in graduate school because, like I said, lots of intelligent people that really care and know a lot about what they're doing. But you also quickly realize that there's a lot of knowledge out there that we just don't have yet. There's so much to know that really anyone can contribute to, like humanity's collective knowledge, if you just care and sort of take the time to figure out where those holes are. And I remember for myself, and I should also say just the idea that as well, that if you do put the time in and come up with something new, that your voice can be heard kind of a lot sooner than you think it would be. You don't need to have a PhD yet to be contributing to the field. But I remember the first moment I had like that was, good seeing you, Max. In my second year doing my dissertation research in Southern Africa, I was realizing there are a lot of elephants in Botswana, and was asking around if anyone knew kind of what the ratio was in biomass and just like weight of animals between humans and elephants. And no one had a number. So I just did some back of the envelope calculations and sort of showed that there's almost twice as much elephant biomass in Botswana as there are humans. And even though that's not like a Nobel Prize winning discovery on its own, just having put something together in a new way and come up with like a little tidbit of knowledge that I eventually saw other people kind of passing around using was a really cool thing to have been part of. And I'm excited to, continue contributing to just our collected knowledge for the rest of my life.
That's great. That's great. Okay. So the last part of graduate school before we talk about how to plan is really that graduate school, many of us get into grad school or whatever our life's work is, which in this case often involves grad school, to make a difference. And what I would like to convey, and I would love to hear what the people on the call want to add to this, is that the area of research that you study not only helps the discipline or the local community, like what Michael was talking about, but it can also help your own community or things that you believe in to be important. And so just a quick example, growing up, I knew an individual from elementary school. We were friends and knew this person all the way through high school. And the person had epilepsy and also some brain trauma. And that's what I've studied my whole career. And I can't say that I thought explicitly, oh, I'm going to do this because of this individual. But every time I asked questions or was writing grants or doing the research, I kept going back to this person, because when you're younger, you don't really know how to help somebody. And so the idea was, how can I make a difference in this area? And that's carried me through my whole career. So Michael and Holly, would you like to add some ways in which what you're doing, also you see it as helping the community, the discipline? Yeah.
Yeah, this kind of goes back a little bit to what I'd said before, that as a graduate student and just being involved in academia in general, you get to follow your passions a lot. There's no prescribed way forward. And because of that, you get to sort of mix and match a lot of different things to address what you care about. For some people I know, it's literally just like they really love this one species of bird and they want to know everything about it and get to follow their passion. and deepening our knowledge of just biology. But for people like myself and many of the people that are in the program that Holly and I are in, it's driven by, I want to say maybe more goal. No, I shouldn't say that. There's no right or wrong way to approach graduate school, but a lot of us really see pressing challenges in the world around us and want to be part of that. And it's great knowing that this is one of the ways to be a part of a solution to whatever the thing that you care about is, and to live a life where you know that you are contributing towards like something a little bit larger. You know, like I said, for myself, it's wildlife conservation. My one goal in life is to be able to look back when I'm done and like know that there are more wild animals because of something I did along the way, which turns out is actually a harder goal than it sounds. But I'm convinced that, you know, being in the sciences and this path through graduate school has moved me closer to that and allowed me to work towards something that I really care about as a person. And I think that adds a lot of like shape and value to just my like lived experience as a human, and is something that like motivates me every day. And I'm really happy as part of the work I get to do. And in addition to that, it's not all just writing papers and doing research. There are also lots of ways to reach out along the way. It turns out I really enjoy teaching. It's been a thing that I've discovered I like a lot as a graduate student. I'm excited to do more of it at Fort Lewis, but you find lots of ways to teach outside of school as well. You know, giving presentations to communities, volunteering for things, having just a little bit of expertise in your field is a really handy thing to have. And in that it's just something that you can give back to your community in a lot of different ways. And those kind of show up in unexpected opportunities throughout your career.
Yeah, I'll just echo what Michael said and say my interest is I want to do something about climate change. I don't want to just study it. I want to do something about it. And I'm in environmental studies, but my advisor's in a different program. She's in atmospheric and oceanic sciences. And it's really worked out well because I get to do like I can't state it when people say this, but pure science or hard science. I get to study the physical processes of Earth, let's just say that. But I also get to tie that into climate change communication. And for me specifically, it's the connection between climate change and racism. And that we're not going to figure out what to do about climate change unless we have all of the voices at the new table. And so I get to work on that while I'm studying the climate system. And I think that in itself to me is what motivates me to keep going in my program, despite the challenges of not knowing how this whole thing works, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm really driven. And so I appreciate what you're saying, Theresa, because certainly your drive is what keeps you going on the hard days.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you. Okay. We are going to shift gears a tiny bit. We remember that if you have a question, you can send it in the chat so we can get those addressed if there's something we didn't cover. But now we're going to talk for a moment about how to plan. And this has been covered quite a bit, but I thought we could at least ask each of the grad students, so Holly and Michael, to say sort of what your go-to is, and then also Patrick, if you wanted to say something about how to find out about the GRE, or each of you can as well. I think that would be a great place to start.
I applied to graduate school a couple different times before I found the right programs for me, both at the master's and PhD level. Sometimes it was me realizing I didn't actually want to go a direction, and sometimes it was just getting rejected. Just like everything in the world we live in right now, everything's competitive, unfortunately. There just aren't a lot of, not that there aren't a lot of opportunities and spaces, but just there's a lot of humans out there right now going for everything. So it's definitely in your best interest to set yourself up as best you can. The one thing that was the biggest thing for me, which may not be true for absolutely everyone, was building the toolbox of skills to show that I could do the things that I wanted to do, which is not what I was not where I was at when I left my undergraduate degree. I actually had to spend a couple of years teching around and teaching myself how to program and get better at stats and use GIS to actually convince the people that not only did I care about wildlife, but I actually was capable of doing projects, being a meaningful contributor to a research project. So I would think critically about what general field you want to be in, then ask around, like, what are the tools people are using in those fields, and just making sure that you come correct with at least a little bit of a basic knowledge in those. You don't need to be an expert in programming when you leave your undergraduate degree, but it's good to know what language your field uses, if any at all, and to show that you can engage with that a little bit. Because it's easy for a lot of people to say, I care a lot about XYZ, about animals, about this, but it's way better as a candidate to say, I care about those and I can do it, and here's a little bit of proof. So I would put some time into that, because I know had I done that as undergraduate, that would save me 2 years of feeling a little bit frustrated with myself.
I'll just add, talk to students, undergraduate students and community college students and graduate students. Certainly they're your best resources, but you have to diversify who you're speaking with, because you get a little bit of information from each person and somehow it compiles all together the parts that are applicable to you. And then graduate students, like Michael was saying earlier, I get emails or requests often from undergraduates saying, can I talk to you about graduate school? And I always say yes, and I always meet them within a day, because I remember what it was like for me. And then third, the GRE. I scored terribly on the GRE. I scored so terribly that I started applying for jobs before I graduated from my undergrad. I applied to 7 programs and I was accepted into 5 of them, even with a horrible GRE score, because I had done research and I had joined student groups and I had gotten to know faculty, and I went to office hours, all of these things. And so I was able to put on paper, this is who I am, this is where it came from, here's where I am, here's where I think I want to go. And so I was still successful. So I was actually really surprised that I got offers, but I did. But the other part of that is there are many departments across the country, including departments within CU, that are waiving the GRE score. They're not looking, they still make you take it because CU, I think, still requires it. I think the College of Arts and Sciences still requires it. Maybe Jason or Patrick can speak to that. But I know for EMVS and the department that my advisors are part of, the professors, the faculty have made the collective decision to not look at the scores, which I'm very grateful for. And I'm a big advocate for that.
And I'll say as well, just in your best interest in applying for things, the GRE is not everything in either direction. When I graduated, it's funny looking back where I was when I was 22 and how naive I was. I got a really good GRE score and thought that meant I could go wherever I wanted, and got into 0 of the 3 places I applied to, because I hadn't done the legwork that Holly had done. I hadn't really just done anything to show that I was anything besides a person that could take a test, which is well and dandy, but actually not what it means to be a graduate student. It's not who's best at regurgitating knowledge. It's about who's best at engaging with people, working hard, learning on your own, being responsible, showing off all these other skills that I hadn't really demonstrated at the time. So don't sweat the GRE too much in either direction, and care more about the unquantifiable skills. It's definitely good.
Yeah. Patrick?
Yeah, I would definitely echo what Michael said. And yeah, Holly, that was great. We don't have a university-wide GRE requirement here at CU, and I don't believe any individual college does either. It's more department specific. Yeah. So like Holly said, the faculty in a specific department get together and decide, is this a metric that we value and that we feel like indicates future success in a graduate program? And frankly, in the natural sciences and biological sciences, I'm seeing that more often than not, the answer is no, we don't need to see this. And so at a lot of our sciences programs within arts and sciences here at CU, the GRE isn't required. Now, some of our engineering programs are a little more, want that GRE score. And so it does kind of vary from department to department, and sometimes even from faculty member to faculty member, how much they value that. So always be sure to reach out to ask the department, do you require the GRE? If so, how much is it weighted? Like Michael said, most of the time the GRE is not the end all be all. It might be like a tie-breaking decision, but I think, and Theresa, I'm sure you can speak to this further, but I think most faculty are looking a lot more closely at things like research experience and undergraduate coursework and your GPA and your major and things like that. So it is good to at least start those conversations with your programs of interest.
Yes, that it is good, especially with so much variability. It would be important to talk to the faculty member or whoever the director of graduate studies in that department is, so you can find out. So I just want to make sure that you have all of these. We can make sure that Callie either makes these available, or maybe I can try to put them in the chat in a moment so that they're available. But there's all of us here at CU Boulder, happy to answer any questions you have. All of us here, all of you there at Fort Lewis College are also happy to answer any questions or just have a conversation. So I'm like Holly, I get lots of questions and I always get right back to people because I remember what it was like waiting to hear from someone. And so it's nice we'd all be happy to talk to you. So I'm going to just introduce the slide, and then I'm going to actually take off shared slides or shared screens so that you can see us. And then we'll see what sort of questions have come out of the chat. And then we also have some questions. So, and there is a Qualtrics survey if you get a chance. Here we go. Okay. All right. So are there any questions in the chat, Yasmin?
So I know one question was already answered, but I think it would be beneficial for everyone to kind of hear this answer. I know it was already addressed, but how does one find a mentor, especially for first generation students?
Yeah, the first time I ever talked to a graduate student, I went to her office hours and I said, I don't have any questions about the class, but I want to ask you about graduate school. Do graduate students like clock in? Do they get paid by the hour? Like, how does this work? I have no idea what does it mean to go to grad school. And so I had a long way to go. Since then, I did help a lot of undergraduates while I was an undergrad in finding research mentors. And then also when you're looking for grad schools and looking for a mentor, it feels extremely daunting. And everyone kept telling me, things will come together. Things will come together. Don't worry, everything will come together. And I kept saying, what does that mean? But somehow things came together. And so I guess I'll say, trust the process. But that being said, I mean, there are things you can do. You probably know what parts of the country you're interested in living in or not living in. So you can look up what schools exist in the parts of the country you're interested in living in. From there, you can, if you know you like to study Earth processes, then you can see what departments there are that study how Earth works. If you're whatever your interests are, you kind of start broad, and then you go from there. It's hard to find if you have like a really specific interest and you Google it and like nobody's studying it. That doesn't mean it's not possible. It just means you got to ask a few more questions about like, so what types of things would somebody study? Like, would an atmospheric scientist know about XYZ? Or is it an engineer, right? I mean, you can't believe the kinds of research people are doing in departments that you wouldn't think it's a match, but it is a match. And so again, it comes down to just asking a lot of questions. And I know that's not easy to do. But I'm going to say, as you do it, it gets easier. Mm-hmm. And you have to trust me when I say that.
I think that everything that Holly said is really great advice. Everyone, of course, has their own like path and story, but I think the one biggest similarity is most people that have a good time in graduate school had some conversation somewhere that like set them on that direction. Talk to a lot of people, and the one that clicks will be the conversation that's, the most important. You'll find the person that knows which way to point you, because it's really hard to know where you want to be and what skills you want to have or degrees you want to have 20 years down the road for whatever career you want to be in. I know for myself, I can point to like 2 graduate students I met as an undergrad that kind of showed me what it was like to be a grad student. That's why I realized it was actually a very different lifestyle than how you are as an undergraduate, which is, I think, hard to figure out on your own without really talking directly to someone. And similarly, I remember the person that told me that I came out of a very like disciplinary and ecology background as an undergrad. where all the professors there were like, you go and you get a PhD and that's all that matters. I remember talking to the first person that told me like, actually a master's is a really good degree. And here's all the things you can do with it, a master's degree that you can't do with a PhD and vice versa. And talking to people that can contextualize more than just like the academic pipelines for you and maybe let you know what's important to have as a skill or as a degree if you want to go into governance or education or the private sector or whatever it is you may want to go into. So make sure you talk to people that kind of are all within that like cluster of related fields, whichever direction you go.
I want to just answer. I get paid once a month. I don't have to clock in. And I think that's a big part of graduate school is because of that, then it's up to me to set my schedule to ensure that I'm making progress in my research. And so that's a big skill building piece, I think, for graduate school that maybe doesn't get talked about as much, but I think it's a really big component of it. And then the second thing is a lot of times when I've done panels like this, another question that has come up is about taking a break in between undergrad and graduate school. I did not take a break, but I advocate for it, especially because I never took a summer off during undergraduate. I was either taking classes or doing research internships. And then I went straight into a PhD program. And that's one more thing. Going from undergraduate to a PhD program sounds very intimidating, but for the programs that offer for you to go straight to a PhD program, they know you're coming from undergraduate. And so they have their departments set up to help you kind of acclimate to doing PhD type research. And so even if you hear from faculty, like all of the faculty in my undergrad, it was Earth and Planetary Sciences, which was basically geology. And they were kind of like senior scientists. And so they very much believed you have to get your master's degree before you get your PhD. You can't go straight to PhD. But for the programs that I was applying for, they didn't offer master's programs. It was only PhD. And that's because the experiments take longer, ultimately. And so you can't really ask a question and answer it in the time frame of a master's degree. But certainly I do feel like everyone that I've dealt with in my research and in the field of research knows that I came straight from undergrad. So they weren't treating me as if I was a fifth year PhD student right off the bat.
Great, thank you so much, Holly and Michael. Oh, Michael, did you have something to add?
Sorry, I just realized I strayed a little bit my answer from the actual question. And I just want to reiterate, even if they're not the people that you work with as a graduate student, the professors you meet as an undergrad are huge resources. I'm still friends with some of them and still go back to them for advice. So connect with your professors. If you have a class that you just think is interesting or you build a rapport with a professor, go to their office hours, work on with them with a project, just hang out with them after class sometime and use them as a resource because they can definitely be, in your life and in your career for a really long time.
Great, thank you. So we do have another question related to mentorship. Do you have to know who your mentor is before you start the program, or is there time to find a mentor after you begin the program?
So that very much depends on the field and the program. For the two graduate programs I've been in, you contacted the professor first, and essentially they decided whether they wanted you or not before you even applied to the school to some level. Others programs and other fields do it very differently. I know at CU, for example, you can go into the biology program by being in touch with the professor, setting something up with them and having them kind of pick you, or you can apply to something like IQ Bio, which is this quantitative sort of feeder program that you come into without mentorship, do rotations for a while, and then pick someone. Of course, if you go into something like, I don't know, like a professional graduate program like med school, it's totally different, but it kind of comes in a lot of different flavors. And each field tends to have their patterns. So a little bit, it depends on which direction you want to go.
Yeah, I would just echo that. It does vary on the nature, depending on the nature of the program. So if it's something with a heavy lab rotation in your first year, like our molecular, cellular, and developmental biology program, you don't need to contact anyone because you're going to be doing a lab rotation. You're going to be introduced to these professors. But for a lot of other ones, like environmental studies, I know is very dependent or pretty dependent on you finding a faculty member who is interested in your research interests and who thinks it would be a good match. So it's usually good to just check the website and check the admissions page, and they'll usually have some guidance. And yeah, like reaching out to the like there's usually a associate chair of graduate studies in a department. Reach out to those individuals and ask, hey, is it okay for me to reach out to professors before applying? Different programs and different schools have very, very different, like you'd be surprised. There are a lot of programs where like, don't contact us. We can't answer all your questions. You know, go to our profile, read our research, but we get too many inquiries to answer everything. So it's good to just kind of investigate a little bit before kind of making that next step.
Great, thank you for that. Oh, Michael, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, if I could add one last little thing to it. So one thing I didn't really realize until I was in the grad school thing is that admission and funding are sometimes a little bit decoupled, that you can often have a professor that wants to work with you, but they don't have funding in the bucket that year, and that might be prohibitive. Sometimes it's also good to look around for projects that already have funding associated with them, which is a little bit different than just looking for professors that you think are interesting. And oftentimes the trick to that is to find like the right listserv. In my field, it's looking at the Ecolog listserv maintained by the Ecology Society of America or Texas A&M Job Board, but looking around at places where like positions that are funded and like already thought out are posted and being shopped around for candidates can also be a good place to start. And that's sort of like a weird hybrid third option between these two.
Yeah, I was just going to add, when you feel like it's time for you to start emailing faculty about if they have positions, that sort of thing, that's like this, to me, that was the scariest part. I typed a draft email and it sat there for 2 months before I ever sent one. And so I certainly offer to share my email with you, the email that I was sending out to faculty, and also to look at yours if you'd like somebody to look at it. Because yeah, that's very daunting. And I mean, there's so many moving parts that ultimately what I discovered is like, if you just ask, like a good place to start is, are you taking students for the year of whatever, for, you know, it would be 2022 to 2023, something like that. Then you get a quick yes or no. That's really helpful. And then from there, I mean, you might add a sentence or two of like, I'm graduating such and such, I'll be applying in the fall, or I'll be, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Thank you, Holly. Our next question, I know that you mentioned finding kind of a community while in grad school. Do you mind sharing some advice on how to find those affinity and cultural groups?
And that that there are some of those, or what the different types of groups for grad students are, if there are specific ones for grad students.
So there's kind of like two levels of community. There's like that academic sort of scholarship community, and then the people around you in your day-to-day life. And both can be really great, but also challenging to build. And I think that when Holly and I talked about this source related question earlier, we were a little bit speaking to like the two different sides of this coin. In terms of building like the academic community, that comes from just like being in the field, finding people that are of interest to you. If you have the ability to do like a summer field camp or something like that, or to work on some of these like feeder programs that help build skills for whichever field you're trying to get into, that can be a really great way. Like I know I really appreciated meeting other undergraduates outside of my university when I was an undergrad that cared about ecology. I'm still good friends with them. One of them works at a zoo now. One of them's with Fish and Wildlife. We're still in correspondence. I'm working on a paper with one of them. And it's great to have people that are kind of at the same level as you, that you get to watch just sort of like, you know, filter down this like web of possible futures. Building the social network very much depends on where you are. I have some friends that were in the University of California system where they go on this like big field trip with their whole department for a week and all become super best friends in this giant orientation. And I've also been kind of on the other extreme was my time at NC State, where there wasn't as much of a cohort there, and you just kind of like found it on your own. In Raleigh, I made all my friends through rock climbing, kind of independent of my program. But maybe you could speak to it at CU, Holly, where we have a little bit of a lot of different things going on.
Yeah, I mean, my story isn't great. I wasn't finding community. So a couple things. you don't always just look within your program. You might find community in student groups or non-official student groups, right? Or something completely separate from academic life. Like I started taking ice skating lessons, just like something completely different, pre-COVID, of course. But for me, now I have community because I spoke up. But that was, I mean, to be perfectly honest, following the brutal murder of George Floyd last summer, I felt like people were not, I was really upset and I couldn't eat and I couldn't sleep. And I felt like people weren't talking about it. There were like some sort of statements coming in my inbox, but I just didn't feel like there were people to talk to. And I just started saying it in Zoom rooms and it was hard. I cried. But long story short, by doing that, I started finding people that were like, yeah, you're right. We do need to do something. Like, what are we doing here? We need to be having some conversation. And that led to much more than conversation. So we take action. And so that, like I was saying earlier, that is where I found community, is in students, staff, and faculty that are taking action to create change at our school. I'm a doer. That's my personality. So I've been looking for the other doers. And we have a really strong community. Michael's part of it in our program. I have community in our program that we're working to change our program, and I have community on a school-wide, campus-wide basis. And through that, I mean, ultimately the message is get to know your community and you will find the folks that you really just feel connected to. But again, it comes to like, you have to put yourself out there. And I'm really involved in a lot of dialogue right now on how do you do that when you're not an extrovert? We live in this world where you're supposed to be an extrovert, but why? Who decided that? And so how can we build community with folks without forcing them to be extroverted? So I'm happy to keep that conversation going. I don't have the answers yet, but we're certainly talking about it.
I wanted to just add that there's also something called STEM Roots, which is a group of graduate students who are interested in ways of mentoring undergraduates. So it's not only a community building, it's also, you know, professional development and just fun because you get to mentor undergraduates in more of the STEM and engineering fields. And then the Center for Native American and Indigenous Studies has their own cottage on part of campus, and they have a lot of really amazing ritual and rites of passage around arriving on campus, finding community, and building community. So those are some of the ones that I'm familiar with. So Callie, I just want to acknowledge that it's 4:59. We can, to be respectful of everyone's time, we can stop now. There was a couple more questions that Yasmin had that we can send the answers to you for, or we can go 3 minutes over. So what would you like us to do, Callie?
I think we go 3 more minutes. Let's finish it up. Yeah,
Okay.
it's nice to have it all in the same recording too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we got 3 minutes or 4 to go through to make sure we cover these questions.
Sure. So our next question, the student is basically asking if they can do research at Fort Lewis while attending CU and be somewhat of a remote student.
I will just say that's going to depend heavily on your faculty advisor. And you know, some faculty mentors I think are more flexible with more non-traditional ways of pursuing graduate school, where it's like, yeah, like we can do this over Zoom, and as long as you have the facilities and the resources you need elsewhere, we can do that. A lot of other faculty members I think are more traditional. It's like, no, I kind of need to see you on a regular basis, and like you have to be able to access my lab. And so I think having those conversations beforehand is the best way to figure out if that's something that's feasible.
I'll just interject that again, depending on the field and the faculty member, of course, there are pretty much like a galaxy of possibilities. In our program, many people do their research well away from Boulder. I work in Southern Africa. Ollie works all over the place on boats, but on a wide range of spots. Similarly, I know many professors at CU that advise students who live in different states and in different continents So there are lots of opportunities there if you are just frank and upright about it, and talk it through with your advisor.
Great. Thank you for that. Our next question, how much does it cost to apply to graduate school? I've heard that application fees can be high. Is there a way to get application fees waived?
Yes, it is expensive. It does add up. I applied to 7 programs. The key is that I think every program I applied to will waive your application fee if you can show financial hardship. And I think they use, I just forgot what it's called. I want to say FAFSA. Is that the right term? Yeah. But you have to do it early enough before the actual application deadline. And that's where I saw a bunch of my friends lose the opportunity to get their application fee waived. But that being said, I also talked to the faculty that I was applying to work with to say, like, I don't have it. So I didn't answer it, but most of them are $150 to $200. The programs that I applied to were $150 to $200 each. So times 7, I don't have that kind of money. And so I did have a couple that said, you know, I can't give you the money up front, but if you can find a way to pay it, then we'll reimburse you, that sort of thing. I know for the Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences program or department at CU, they actually have a waiver where the department will pay your fee. And it's, again, where like they have to follow the rules that you pay it, but then they'll pay you back, I guess is the way they're doing it. Which again is why we need to change the system so we don't have to find loopholes to make it accessible for folks. But I digress.
Patrick, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. Our application fees here aren't as steep as some of the ones that Holly was applying to. I think we charge a $60 app fee for domestic students, $80 for international students. But yeah, I mean, it still adds up. When it comes to app fee waivers, we have a couple folks who automatically qualify. So like if you are a member of the armed forces or a veteran of the armed forces, we'll waive it. If you're in AmeriCorps or Peace Corps, we'll waive it. If you were a McNair scholar. So there are certain groups we automatically waive, but like Holly said, do contact individual faculty as well and say, I'm really interested in your research and I really want to apply. I can't make this happen without really putting myself at a disadvantage. And I think if you're a good enough candidate and they're interested enough, they'd be more than happy to kind of try to find a way to reimburse you or pay that application fee.
Great, thank you for that. I do want to be cognizant of everyone's time. So just to reiterate, I'm putting the link for our Qualtrics survey. If your question didn't get answered today, please fill that out. And I'm also putting all of the emails again, if you need those, into the chat.
Okay, so thank you all so much for being here. This was just a wonderful session. I learned a lot, and I really appreciate and value you being here. And to the students who were able to attend, we really appreciate you being here. And we want to hear from you. We're happy to answer any questions, even if it was something we talked about, but you didn't quite, maybe I didn't make it clear enough or something. So please reach out to any of us and we will get back to you. Holly and I very quickly, because we're quick responders, and everybody else quickly, but maybe not as quickly as us. So thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Cole, for co-hosting this with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you all. This has been super informative, and I hope we can actually just do this again, like somewhat regularly, because like I was telling Theresa, a lot of times the urgency sets in early September.
Yeah.
I think I could get a room that's a little bit more full in early September when seniors are like, what? When's the deadline? Oh God. And we have a senior seminar class that we could actually just have it during our classes too, because at the end of the day, it is hard to fill a room. But like, this is so informative, and I look forward to sharing the video of it also with several students who couldn't make it this evening. So, thank you.
We'll plan on September. We had talked about a fall one as well. So everyone remember this. This is good. So thank you all so much. Thank you again. Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.